Black Magic Woman podcast acknowledges the traditional owners of the land we have recorded this episode on. We also acknowledge traditional owners of the land where you, the listener or viewer, are tuning in from. We would like to pay our respects to our elders past and present and acknowledge that this always was Aboriginal land and always will be Aboriginal land.
Welcome to the Black Magic Woman podcast with Mundanara Bayles.
Welcome to another episode of the Black Magic Woman podcast. I am the host, Mundanara Bayles. For those that are now watching us on YouTube, it's great to have your company. And for all the rest of you mob and our deadly allies, thank you for supporting me. And it's been absolutely amazing, especially now the fact that we are on the iHeart network. So if you've got a smartphone, you can download the iHeart app and you'll find Black Magic Woman. Anyhow, let's get into the yarn. Today I've got a guest who I've been stalking for the last couple of months. I came across Bobbi Lockyer on Instagram and I was just like, I need to yarn to this sister. Little did I know that she would be here on Gadigal country, aka Sydney. We've just come from the Afterpay Australian Fashion Week runway where we saw history literally in the making with the first ever Aboriginal Arts Centre on the runway with a solo show. Big shout out to Ikunji, to the mob, who we also will have on the podcast, so stay tuned. But today I want to introduce my sister Bobbi Lockyer all the way from Port Hedland here in Sydney. And I just can't believe, this is literally, we were at the Fashion Week an hour ago and here we are sitting on the couch on the podcast. I know, we're
it's crazy.
It's crazy.
Thank you so much for having me on.
I can't believe you kind of just was like, sweet, let's just drop our plans and let's make this happen. So all of the guests on the podcast, I hand over to you to introduce yourself. And I always love when people share their stories and talk about their mob, their country, and just a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so thank you again for having me here. So my name is Bobbi Lockyer. I'm a Gariada, Nyalama, Nyulnyul and Yaru woman. So that's from the Pilbara and the Kimberley in WA. So I've come a long distance to be here and I'm currently living where I grew up in Gariada country, Marapikarinya, also known as Port Hedland. Wow. I'm an artist, a photographer and a fashion designer. I like to say I'm a triple threat.
Triple threat, or just a woman with many skills. But it's also interesting because you're also a mother.
Yes.
You got 4 kids.
4 boys. They certainly keep me busy and they are literally the reason why I do everything that I do.
And so you got a partner.
Yes.
So sorry everybody else. Taken. Shop shut.
Yes. I'm very lucky. I have a lot of support there and wonderful partner that's really stepped up for me and my kids. 6 years ago I escaped a domestic violence relationship and I've been a single mother for the better part of 5 years and now I have someone quite amazing in my life.
And you know what, it's so deadly that as black women that we can find another deadly black man to support us, to hold us up, to keep everything moving at home, because that's what my husband's doing at home with 5 kids.
Mm-hmm.
So straight away when I was talking to your partner, I was just thinking, man, geez, you're deadly. To allow you and to support you to do what you do and the fact that you're here.
Yeah.
Man, in terms of our kids, you said that's why you do what you do. How long have you been doing what you do? Because your art won the National NAIDOC poster. So if you have not checked out the NAIDOC poster, then this is Bobbi Lockyer. This is her artwork. And also big congratulations, my sister, because Woolworths, big company, have signed a partnership with you.
Yeah.
With homewares. Tell us about this. How did it happen?
Woolworths actually reached out to me, which was pretty exciting. When I first got the email, I was like, is this for real? We set up a Zoom meeting and had some chats and we've got the first range is already, it's only in its 3rd week and it's already 60% sold out, which is incredible. And I've got a few more ranges coming out over the next year.
So tell us about what exactly what's on the shelf at Woolworths so our listeners and viewers can hear it, get out there, get online, start buying it, let it sell out because this
if you can find it.
If you can find it, I was going to say, like, this shit is so hot right now. If you don't get in now, good luck. So there's homewares.
Yeah, so we've got bedding, we've got cushions, we've got photo frames, mugs and water bottles for the first drop, and then the next drop will have candles and pot plants.
Okay.
And it's literally selling out across the country, which has been crazy. When we got the stock into my local store in Port Hedland, they sold out within 1 hour. So,
Wow.
yeah, Woolworths have actually set up a hotline for people ringing up about the Bobbi Lockyer range because I was getting inundated with emails and messages saying, sis, where can I get it from? And I'm like, I'm not Woolworths. I don't know. Yeah.
And before even Woolworths, I did not know, I didn't put two and two together. And I told you I only just found out how to DM on Instagram after 7 years of having Instagram. I didn't know that you could DM. I didn't even know what DM meant. Anyhow, I'm old school, Facebook. So, New York Fashion Week, your garments, your clothing have featured on the runway in New York. That shit is off the chain. And I would never have known, running into having a yarn with you, would never have known that you have achieved so much in such a short amount of time. And even thinking about all the other things going on in your life and what you've been able to overcome. And here you are in New York.
Yeah, it's been incredible. I was really lucky. So Rebecca from Deadly Denim actually reached out to me a few years ago and wanting to put my art on her denim jackets. And so I did that collaboration and she ended up having her jackets featured at Paris Fashion Week. That was really exciting, and that kind of sparked that love for fashion back in me because, you know, my mum taught me how to sew on a sewing machine when I was 4 years old, and I've always been into fashion. But growing up, I was always told that I was too black for fashion, too fat for fashion. It was like something that I couldn't achieve, and so I sort of put those dreams aside. But doing that collaboration with Deadly Denim, it just sparked that love again. I was like, actually, I want to do this. So I started sketching out designs, and then last year I got to showcase at Australian Fashion Week with FNFD, and that was incredible. And then straight off the back of that, I was invited to showcase in New York Fashion Week, and it's been incredible.
So today we got to witness Ikunji. Did that bring back some memories? Was you starting to think,
yeah,
this is me. I'm coming back. Is there a comeback? Can you see yourself? You've got the Woolworths stuff happening, which is amazing. Nearly every corporate plus black community knows who you are because that poster, how many talented Deadly Black fellas are out there that would have submitted thousands right, of submissions. So your poster, you know, it speaks just volumes. The theme is for our elders. Well, I know the inspiration. It's a stupid question, right? The inspiration behind the poster is for our elders. But what was you thinking about when you sat down and started putting that poster together? Because that spoke like it spoke to me. There's like words that I can't even describe when I looked at that poster, and I felt connected to it in a way that I have never connected to a NAIDOC poster before.
Oh, thank you so much.
It was beautiful.
Yeah, I think the theme was just so beautiful. I straight away when I saw the theme, I thought, how are we going to honour our elders? And I thought about all our significant elders that I could draw to put on this poster, and there's just so many. I couldn't choose one specific person. I thought we need to honour all our elders. They're all equally as important in our lives and integral in our lives, not just the ones out there being showcased in the media, but the ones back home in our communities. And so I just started sketching these designs, and like I changed it around a bit. And yeah, I think for me, once I get sort of started in an art piece, the inspiration just flows. And yeah, I submitted my design literally at the 11th hour. Didn't think I was even going to make the deadline. And so I was really shocked when they rang me and told me that I had won. And it was pretty cool that, you know, I've won the NAIDOC poster, but I also won NAIDOC Artist of the Year in 2021.
Well, there you go. Like, congratulations. So you're kind of on the radar with winning the Artist of the Year for the National NAIDOC. It is not easy to get shortlisted. Let me tell you, for our non-Indigenous, non-Black listeners, right? It's not easy to get shortlisted into these categories with National, you know, Elder of the Year Artist of the Year, Sports Person of the Year. It's quite competitive. To be able to, I don't know, like it's like when community can see what you've achieved, when your family can see what you've achieved. How did that feel? What was that like?
It just makes me so proud that I get to be a part of this, continuing our culture, continuing our storylines, and just, using my talent to be able to share that. I just love being a part of it, and I feel super proud to be a part of that.
And I literally, I've got goosebumps all over my body of just thinking about, for our children, for just young Black kids, regardless of where you come from, what kind of experiences that you've had. If you knew half of my story or half of your story, and here we are today, sitting on this couch, in a beautiful hotel here in Darling Harbour, and we're having this amazing yarn. Like, what's your message? If you could talk to young people, especially our young kids who are probably struggling, with juvenile justice in and out of the system, child protection, our kids are still being taken away at rates that, are through the roof. Sometimes it's like that one person that we have or have had that has played like a pivotal role in our lives. Like my dad was the one that kept saying to me, and this is after bailing me out of the watch house. 4 of my sisters are in out of prison. 5 of my sisters are single mums. A couple of my sisters, I think 3, gave birth before their 16th birthdays. And my mum died at the age of 45, so 22 years ago. So my dad was like holding it down, trying to raise 8 hard-headed Black women and all of these kids, all these grandchildren. And it was my dad that said to me, after bailing me out from the watch house one morning, he said to me, who's going to continue my legacy? And I said, well, obviously it's not me. I don't want to be a public speaker. I don't want to be in media. I just want to live my life. I've got no kids, no responsibilities. Sorry, Dad.
Mm-hmm.
And I honestly remember that clear as day. And I think the disappointment in his eyes, not that then I thought about it, and I think I would have slept off the night that I had, but when my dad passed 7 years ago, all I kept thinking about is I owe it to him. I had a really amazing person, my mum as well, but my dad, that never gave up on me.
Mm-hmm.
All the times he bailed me out, all of the crisis points in my life, he never gave up on me. And I think that's what our kids need. They need to know that we're here, that we believe in them. And then, it's not easy to say if we can do it, you can do it too. But sometimes they just need, and we even as, Black women, need to hear those positive messages or just words of encouragement to keep us, to keep turning up, to keep doing what we do. So whether it's a message to other Black women that have got kids sitting at home thinking about what can they do, or whether it's young people, because once upon a time we were that young person too. What would your messages be? It's a big one.
Yeah, it is a big one. I'm just really really proud that I get to use my art to advocate for our people. I'm really passionate about birthing on country, and so I use my photography and my art in that way. But my message would really be to not listen to the naysayers, not listen to the people that tell you can't do it. I spent my whole life being told I couldn't do it, and here I am proving that I can do it. Yeah, so don't listen to anyone else. Listen to yourself and be true to yourself.
And in terms of elders, like NAIDOC Week's coming up, and these are like significant dates in our calendar. National Reconciliation Week is a week of education, and NAIDOC Week is really when we celebrate. We celebrate our culture, we celebrate our existence, we celebrate being Black.
Yes.
And it's like this week, we celebrate every day. We don't need a week to celebrate. But in terms of a lot of corporates that are listening, and hopefully even more continue to listen, especially now that this is on the iHeart Network, we've got an opportunity as Black fellas to share our stories. Is there any messages out there that you want to share with just your everyday Australian that might be watching this? They might be allies advocates on their reconciliation journey, or still sitting back figuring out, they don't know where to start? There's so much going on in our country right now. What would you say to them in terms of supporting us? Like, just think about the fact that we are businesswomen.
Yeah.
And the data says that we are 100 times more likely to employ other Indigenous people. So a lot of these big corporates that have their reconciliation action plans, they have procurement targets. They need to spend money with other Black businesses. You've got art. Can they, reach out to you, engage with you? Do you do commission pieces?
Yeah, absolutely.
You tell them.
Yeah, I do art, I do photography, I do fashion design. With my art, I do reconciliation action plan artworks, and all sorts of corporate commissions and stuff. But one thing that I want to touch on is I'm part of a collective called Black Lens, which is for Black photographers, Indigenous photographers, and it's about getting us into those spaces where, like a Black event, like NAIDOC Week, where it should be a Black photographer is hired for this event, and not just Black photographers, Black makeup artists, Black models. We've just come from Fashion Week. I want to see more Indigenous people hired into these spaces, because it not only makes it culturally safe for everyone there, but it's giving us more opportunity. And so many times I see these big companies, they just hire whoever because they don't believe in us. And I feel like they really need to get behind us and hire Black.
I think so too. And that's what I started the podcast initially for, was to amplify as many Black voices as possible. And there's some non-Black, non-Indigenous, deadly people that I've had on this podcast, but there's so many of our mob that just, are unseen, unheard, don't have public profiles, or don't want to put themselves out there. And that's something that, it's within our culture.
Yeah.
That you don't big note yourself. You don't put yourself outside of your group.
Yeah.
But there's a time and a place. And I love the fact that with this podcast, I can talk you up. I can big note for you and tell them what you've achieved, because it's this kind of humbleness and groundedness that, our old people have passed down to us.
Yeah.
Like the beauty of our culture. Your artwork is just freaking unbelievable. Can you share with us, is there anything in the pipeline before we wrap up this yarn? Is there anything in the pipeline that you're working on? Or is there anyone that you want to work with? Can you share something that other people don't know? Because then they can say they heard it here first.
Yeah, okay. There's quite a few big things coming up, but I can't talk about them. You'll see some stuff happening with NAIDOC Week and towards the start of next year. But Qantas, if you're listening, I want my art on one of your planes. I have wanted it since I was a little kid, and I'm working my way up there. I've had my art wrapped on toll trucks, on buses. It's going to be on the Sydney Light Rail and the Canberra Light Rail.
Okay.
But I want a plane.
So Qantas, if any of you mob at Qantas that are listening, I know that Qantas don't have the podcast. They don't actually have any podcasts as part of their in-flight entertainment, only Virgin. But I'm sure people are listening. Everyone's connected, especially when you're Black. Corporates that have wraps, most of them are looking for more Indigenous suppliers to embed into their supply chain. So we'll make sure that after this, we might send a link to Qantas and say, hey, even why not think about featuring Bobbi Lockyer in your magazine, so that the whole world can hear this woman's story and to see her beautiful art. I am so keen to hear about your fashion label. Tell us, how did that begin? Where did it start? And what's going on with the label?
Yeah, so with my passion for fashion coming back, I launched my label at Australian Fashion Week last year in May, and I branded my label Gunthady, which is a Nyalama word which means both grandmother and queen bee. And whilst I really love the name Gunthady and it really resonated with me, I have had a bit of a pause on my label, but I am rebranding it and bringing it back next year, and it will be Bobbi Lockyer, the label. And I'm really excited about that, and I am aiming for a solo show at Australian Fashion Week next year.
So tell us about, in terms of fashion, how hard is it to get into that industry? Have you been able to, find the right people to support you, to promote you, to back you, to invest in you? Like, how hard is it? Because we don't see many black labels.
Yeah, it's incredibly hard. It's a bit of a cutthroat industry, and you've really got to want it to go after it. But I've loved all the experiences along the way, and yeah, I've just got to work my way up and get it out there. But yeah, I've definitely found it a bit of a struggle, especially when it comes to production and manufacturing. It's a lot of trial and error. It's a lot of going back and forth, because whilst I can create and whip up something myself, it's getting a whole team and getting in production to mass produce it, because I want to be stocked in stores. So it's a big experience.
And where you live, like, share with my listeners and viewers as well. Talk about, like, where is Port Hedland? Describe the country. Describe some of the challenges for you as a black woman in business to live basically on your country that's not exactly a capital city. So tell us about Port Hedland.
So
I've never been there.
Port Hedland is, so in my perspective, Port Hedland is beautiful. I love Port Hedland, but I also have a love-hate relationship with Port Hedland. It's a coastal mining town. We have one of the biggest ports, or it might be the biggest port in Australia, and there's a lot of miners there, mining industry, which, I don't really resonate with. But as a town itself, like, I am connected to Port Hedland because that's where I grew up. I grew up on the beach. We have these tides that go right out, and you can walk out on the reef, see all the coral, and all of that sort of plays into my artwork. I really love Port Hedland in that sense, but I struggle with it being such a remote town. It's, impossible to get things shipped there. It's impossible to get things when you need them. You have to wait weeks. And to get anywhere, to get here to the East Coast, I have to catch 2 flights. You can't get out of Port Hedland without going through Perth first. Mm-hmm. And so, there's definitely a lot of struggles there, but every time I weigh up my options, do I want to move here? Do I want to move there? I always go back home, back to where I grew up, back where my ancestors are. So it's home for me.
I've seen a lot of those mining companies in the media at the moment, and there was some rocks with rock art that dates back tens of thousands of years, and they just want to pick them up and move them.
Yeah, at Marajuga.
Yes.
Yeah.
Can you share with us Marajuga? I've never been there, but I'm fascinated that it's like right next to this huge mining, and the gases that's released are actually they're damaging.
Yeah.
Like significant, sacred, ancient history, a whole museum.
Yeah, it's heartbreaking what's going on there. I definitely think that you should go visit Marajuga. It's one of the most beautiful places I've ever been to, aside from the mining plant right next to it. But you go in there and it's just a place where you feel so grounded and you can connect, and just seeing this art, and it's like the highest concentration of rock art in Australia, and it's totally so magic and incredible, and it's just a real shame that what is happening, like it's disgusting, really.
And that really goes back to the fact that, Australia being a settler society and a colonised country, the respect towards Aboriginal cultural heritage and sites of significance, like, we're only 3% of the population. Half of our population are children. It is literally next to, like, it's impossible to some degree to try and educate the 97% of the population about the history and heritage of this country that they too call home.
Yep.
We need them. We need them. We need their voices. We need your support to protect these sites that have been here since millennia. Our children and our future generations, the way that it's going, that I've been watching from the East Coast, is they're not going to be able to see those sites.
Yeah.
And that, to me, it's like, it hurts you, because our ancestors, and there's so many different stories, that they're resting there. or our creators are close, and we've got these sacred sites right across this country, all over Sydney Harbour. How do we try and get, mainstream Australians to even be curious enough, it's that lack of curiosity to want to understand what this country means to us, what the land means to us, how we need the land more than the land needs us.
Yeah.
How do we, your art is one way that you're able to kind of, connect with people and tell the stories of your art to people. And that's lovely. Buy painting, put it on the wall. But there needs to be more.
Yeah.
It's like when people do an acknowledgement of country and they acknowledge elders. Like, do you even know the elders you're acknowledging?
Yeah.
Have you sat and listened to the stories of that country that you acknowledge every day? That's what I said to people. Talking the talk is the start. Yep. That's the first step. But now we need you to walk the walk.
Yeah.
We need our allies to step up and to be active allies, to put pressure on governments, especially right now. It's a crucial time where things are happening with or without traditional owner consent. And it is, it's heartbreaking.
Yeah. And I feel like it also really needs to start in school. Like, when I went to school, they touch on all the history of other countries, but they don't even touch on anything remotely to do with Indigenous history. And if we get Australian history, it's all about Captain Cook and all that shit. But where's the real education? We need to start with our kids and educate them, because there's so many white Australian adults who just have no idea. They have no clue, and they don't realise how sacred these sites are for us. Like, I was just in Paris recently and everyone's going on about that cathedral that burnt down and this man-made thing, and I was like, who gives a crap? What about our rocks at Marajugga that are being moved without our consent? Yeah.
And that's, I guess, again, the beauty of this podcast is people from all around the world. And we know this from the analytics that people are listening to this in Spain, and they are listening to this in places like Sweden and Papua New Guinea. So, if we can get more people even outside of Australia to start putting pressure on the Australian government to take action,
yes,
so that our future generations will be able to enjoy this country, the richness, the beauty, all of what this country has to offer us. And you hit on the head with education. This podcast, and there are many other First Nations podcasters, so get online and Google, have a look, that are using their voices and platforms such as a podcast to educate people. So I'm glad that if people have not heard of you, not come across you until listening to this podcast, I really do hope that they start thinking twice now about what can they do? What's the first steps that they can do? Who can they talk to? They can share this podcast with another family member. There's so much more. Yeah, think about significant dates that are coming up now in our calendar, usually organisations that have a wrap, have a budget, invest in more Black businesses, because that's how you can make a direct impact in our communities. Look, on that note, I just want to say, even at last minute, thank you so much for just dropping things to jump on this podcast. I love the fact that we were able to connect face to face, and I believe this, that our ancestors put us together and made this happen. But sometimes you can't just say, not ready. You're like, okay, I don't know if I want to be on YouTube or on camera, but thanks for trusting me.
No, of course. Thank you so much for having me. And I think because we're both wearing pink, that's why we were drawn together.
Straight away. First person I saw when we went to the event. So on that note, thank you so much for jumping on the podcast. And to my listeners and viewers, I hope you've enjoyed this yarn as much as I have. So bye for now.
Thank you so much. Bye.
If you'd like any more info on today's guest, please visit our show notes in the episode description. A big shout out to all you Deadly Mob and allies who continue to listen, watch and support our podcast. Your feedback means the world. You can rate and review the podcast on Apple and Spotify, or even head to our socials and YouTube channel and drop us a line. We'd love to hear from you. The Black Magic Woman podcast is produced by Clint Curtis.